All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about an incredible artistic explosion that happened in eastern India for about 400 years, all the way from the 8th to the 12th centuries. This was the time of the Pala Empire, and the art they sponsored, well, it wasn't just beautiful, it was a hugely important moment in the story of Asian culture.
And you don't have to take my word for it. The famous art historian Vidya Deheja absolutely nails it with this quote. She calls it the height of Indian aesthetics. And she's right. This wasn't just some local style. The art from the Pala period was this amazing, sophisticated mix of deep spirituality and incredible technical skill. It really was a high point.
And this right here is the heart of the story. It's why this period is so important. Because after the Pala dynasty fell, Buddhism and all the patronage that went with it just faded away in India. So what we're looking at really is the magnificent final act. It's the last great flowering of Buddhist art in the very place it was born.
So how did this all play out? Well, the story kicks off in the 8th century with a ruler named Gopala. But the real golden age gets going under Dharmapala and Devapala. These guys weren't just kings, they were huge supporters of Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhism. And this is when two legendary artists, a father-son duo named Demon and Vitpala, come onto the scene and really define the style. This whole artistic tradition carries on for centuries until things start to wind down in the 12th century.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about the architecture. The Pala didn't just build, they built on a monumental scale. I mean, they were creating what were essentially entire cities, all dedicated to learning and to faith. These buildings were physical proof of their deep devotion to Buddhism.
Now, what I find really fascinating is how their choice of materials tells a story. For the most part, they use burnt bricks. Super versatile, easy to work with, but also not very strong. And that's the tragic irony here, isn't it? This grand vision was built with stuff that just doesn't last, which is why so many of these incredible sites are in ruins today. They saved the good stuff, the tough black basalt, for their amazing sculptures, and they even came up with this unique curved roof, the bangla roof, which was inspired by the local bamboo huts.
To really get Pala architecture, you have to understand this one word, Mahavihara. Now, don't think of a quiet little monastery up on a hill. No way. These were massive, sprawling, buzzing centers of intellect. Basically the great universities of their day. They were magnets pulling in scholars, monks, and artists from all over Asia. They were the engines driving this whole cultural phenomenon.
And this just shows you the insane scale of what they were doing. Gopala found Odantapuri, Dharmapala built the incredible Somapura and Vikramashila, and the Palas also breathed new life into the even older university at Nalanda. Just to give you an idea, Somapura Mahavihara, which is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, was this huge square monastery that had 177 separate cells for monks. Can you imagine? All right, so inside these Mahaviharas, the artists were getting busy. And the crucial thing to remember is that they mastered not one, but three completely different sculptural traditions: stone, bronze, and terracotta. Each one had its own feel, its own personality, and its own way of capturing the divine.
Let's talk about bronze. The Pala artists were absolute masters of this super sophisticated technique called cire perdu, or lost wax casting. It's a complex process that lets you create sculptures with unbelievably fine detail and flowing, elegant shapes. I mean, in terms of pure technical ability, these bronzes were right up there with the famous Chola bronzes from the south.
And here you can really see the difference between the two main styles. The bronzes, they're all about elegance and graceful lines. They feel light, almost like they could move. Then you have the stone sculptures. Carved from that hard, black basalt, they are solid. They feel monumental, more formal, and they just radiate this powerful spiritual intensity.
But it wasn't all just serene, divine figures. The Palas also brought in this really lively folk art tradition. They used terracotta plaques made from local clay to decorate the outside walls of the Mahaviharas. And these things are incredible. They show you scenes of everyday life, people dancing, playing music, animals. It's like they brought a little bit of the secular, everyday world right into these deeply sacred places.
Okay, let's switch gears completely. We're going to zoom way in, from massive buildings and life-size statues to the tiny, delicate, intricate world of miniature painting, done on a single, fragile palm leaf.
The level of sheer craftsmanship here is just astounding. I mean, look at this. This is the process just to make the page. They had to pick the best leaves, soak them in water for a whole month, dry them just right, and then polish the surface with a conch shell to make it smooth. And all of that was before a single drop of paint was ever used.
And this style, which was pioneered by those masters Demon and Vitpala, is basically considered the starting point for the entire tradition of Indian miniature painting. The art itself is known for its super delicate lines and these peaceful, elongated figures. But these weren't just pretty pictures. The paintings were usually of scenes from the Buddha's life or complex deities, and they were commissioned by monks as an act of piety to gain religious merit. They were sacred objects.
So what's the ultimate legacy of this 400-year-long artistic journey? Well, its influence didn't just stop at the borders of the Pala Empire. Oh no, this art traveled, and it completely reshaped the cultural map of Asia. So let's take a look at just how far it reached and give it a fair assessment.
This table gives us a really nice, balanced look. The strengths, they're undeniable. The elegant style, the mastery of bronze casting, and its massive, massive influence. But, there were limits. We already talked about the fragile brick architecture, and sometimes, over the centuries, the style could get a little stiff, a little too rigid, with so much ornamentation that it kind of lost some of its original grace.
And that influence was just huge. It spread north, and Pala art became the foundation for almost all of the art in Nepal and the entire Tibetan Buddhist world. It also went east, traveling along the sea trade routes, shaping the famous temples and sculptures in Myanmar, Thailand, and even all the way out in Java, in Indonesia. It really did become an international style.
And this is how it happened. It wasn't by accident. You have to think of this art as a kind of visual theology. The monks and pilgrims who traveled to and from those great Mahaviharas like Nalanda, they carried these ideas, and a lot of times, actual small bronzes and painted manuscripts with them. They were like cultural ambassadors, spreading this very sophisticated artistic and philosophical system all across the continent.
Which leaves us with this one last big question to think about. The Pala Empire? Long gone. Their amazing monasteries? Mostly ruins. But the art survived. It outlived the people who made it, and it carried the complex ideas of late Indian Buddhism across mountains and oceans, influencing cultures for 1,000 years. It really makes you wonder, how does art do that? How does it achieve that kind of immortality?